So
Well,
here we are. Where are we going this time,
well,
Chris?
this final episode, we want to deep dive into what's going on right now in our collective.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to ask you to start. Where do we start?
Yeah. Well, um, having spent countless hours over decades, at least the last 20 plus years, uh, and leading up to the last, 4 years, the last few months, uh, the last few weeks, and leading up to the mortar and pistol point of this week, uh, we're in what appears to be quite a pickle. And yet, we can have absolute faith in what is about to unfold, which is really extraordinary to be able to say that. Uh, and of course, it's also true that probably most of us are, not spending that kind of time as we're working or doing other things. And for this one here, has to understand what's going on in the collective consciousness as a scientist of human consciousness, and how do we all wake up together. So it does uh, absolutely appear that uh, everything's going to be okay. So, what are you finding, Kristen? I'll just bat it the ball back and forth for a moment.
Sure. I spend a lot of time researching what's going on too, as I always like to have a finger on the pulse of the collective. And also, I see so many clients who serve as light workers, anchor points on the light grid as well. So I get a good gauge from my clientele, if you will, because I'm a healer. So I work with them emotionally to help release their traumas so that they can. That's the best way we can all contribute towards ascension, and play the part that they came here to play. So I'm getting a feel that a lot of people are getting antsy, disappointed. They want to see things happen. We've been, for a long time in our community, sort of given breadcrumbs, if you will, and a lot of them don't manifest into actuals. So it can be a bit disconcerting. And I see some of us losing hope. Me personally, I have a lot more hope than ever, because I do have faith that one way, shape, or form, everything will be revealed. I don't have a clue as to how exactly it's going to happen. Obviously, I see a lot of intel from different contributors, if you will, different voices in the communities. But, I think it might drag out for some time, maybe a couple months, before we see something that we really want to see, a little bit more physical manifestation of that which we've been working hard to co-create for a very long time, certainly for the past 4 years in accelerated form. Do you resonate with that?
Yes, completely. It's, we're being put through our paces, and we're, as we've already said in past meetings, that we have to be a surprise and unknowable, and get used to that, and actually learn to be like we were when we were little children, to where we delighted in how surprising and unknowable everything was. I mean, we knew we didn't know, and we weren't afraid. Well, hopefully because our parents were reassuring, and they seemed to know what was going on, and they had groceries and protected us in their homes. And so could be carefree, and they would put us out the door and say, "Go play, children, have fun." And so let's not forget that we can do that now. We are like little children, and we need to be having fun here. So I don't want to reveal anything that might give anything away, but I feel confident that I can reveal what others have been told is okay to reveal, who are in touch with the top military insiders, and that is that is it any accident that one day the National Guard in Washington D.C. Was not armed, and then suddenly the next day they were all armed. They went from 7,000 to now 30,000. Well, so there is the suggestion by the insiders that I've listened to is that the power elite could have as many as 10,000 or more troops underground in Washington D.C. that could just appear suddenly with all kinds of weaponry and to fight off the troops on the ground. And there could be this horrific conflagration with battling satellites and weapons that we've never seen utilized, and people being arrested. So it could be quite a scene coming up here in the next few days. I mean, I understand that although there have been it's been said that there would be some emergency broadcasts before now, due to the fact that the BLM members and the Antifa members were being arrested, and that there was something that had to happen before that could happen that came up unexpectedly, but that's still yet to happen, and that it may be necessary to have blackouts so that people can't communicate with each other, and that will give either side an advantage. And so there's all kinds of wartime techniques that will be implemented in the next few days that could be scary if we didn't know how or why these techniques are being used. And ultimately have faith in the emergence of what's the greatest good for all, because that's the greatest power there is. I mean, you can't dictate to a minority and mind manipulate them into believing that they are going to march along with you to dictate to the majority and take over the planet without there being some kind of pushback. So we need to go through this. It is an exploratory experience for all of us. We've never been through anything like this. And, those of us who are don't mind being terrified and excoriated and shamed and belittled and treated as disgusting and deplorable, will perhaps find it amusing, as well as profoundly taxing of our capacity for empathy and compassion for those who would want us dead. I mean, we've seen the evidence, at least I know this one certainly has. It's been disclosed for the last at least 60 years or more. I mean, they do want to wipe out all but about 500 million of us. We've spoken about the Georgia Guidestones. And so when we contemplate being confronted by those who want us dead on a mass scale like this, and they're so, they've been brought up, as we've learned from some of the children that have escaped the Illuminati. They've been brought up with their own parents sacrificing children in front of them ripping the heart out and eating it and drinking the blood of these children that their own parents are sacrificing in front of their own children, so their children would feel absolutely terrified of their own parents, so they could be more manipulated by their parents to serve this Cosa Nostra, if you will. This is how multiple personality disorder is caused, is through trauma, deliberate trauma, foisted upon the innocent over and over and over again over weeks and months, so that the psyche and heart and body of the infant or the individual is so fractured that their personalities become compartmentalized, and they can be anchored to triggers like the what's the movie? The Manchurian Candidate.
Yes.
So where this guy was likable, lovely person, political person up there in the upper ranks of Washington, and just by getting a phone call and the person on the other end of the phone saying, egg McMuffins or something, he turns into this assassin who's like totally stone cold killer, and goes to where the weapon is and assembles the rifle and gets up in the upper bleachers of the auditorium to murder the president or whatever it was. So a lot of these children that took out AK-47s and murdered people in movie theaters were actually what are called sleepers. So their fathers and mothers were psychiatrists who used drugs on them to develop them into these bioweapons, these weaponized children. The nefarious people, which is not a code word, are willing to sacrifice their own children to move this agenda forward, which is almost unthinkable, which is why what makes them so powerful is that they're able to do things that no one would dream of doing. I mean, especially putting your own children up to do something like that, to murder other children, and then their own children be murdered, or adjudicated, and shamed and seen as a heinous murderer, an insane person by the rest of society, such that they, as parents, would be seen as terrible, terrible parents. See, they don't mind that. They expect that. They have since birth been trained to not care what they feel. In fact, if they feel terrible and they feel murderous rage, if they feel like bloodlust, that feels more relaxing and promising to them, as insane as that may sound. So we're up against the archons, against the reptilians have been hybridizing the power elite, who, like Corey Goode and others, and Michael Salla, exopolitical scientist, who coined the term exopolitics, as I recall. There was this terrible conflagration where this super Earth, that Mars was a satellite, like the Earth is to the moon. Marduk was attempted with Mars as a multi-planet society to aim a very powerful space weapon at these other ETs that were invading or seen to be as invaders, and instead of annihilating the invaders, it flipped around by a technological mistake and annihilated them and blew up Marduk, which is now the Kuiper Belt. Astrophysicists have reassembled it, all the pieces and parts in that meteor belt and seen that it would make up a planet the size of this one that ETs and have told us, used to exist there, and have shown us the blast wave of this super weapon explosion on the surface of Mars, and how NASA has even admitted there were oceans 2 miles deep on Mars, and blew the oceans and blew the atmosphere right off of Mars. It still has some atmosphere. You can still breathe there, not as well as, it's like breathing at 14,000 feet, I understand it. From Randy Kramer, who I would highly recommend listening to on Gaia as a super soldier, who is presenting the evidence for ETs, and as a Marine who has been tasked with the job of telling us about our place in the cosmos with thousands of other extraterrestrial races, and how we're up against it, as has been discussed in an earlier epic here. So we're in quite a position here to wake up and smell the roses. What do you have to say, Christmas?
Yeah, I think it's about righting our wrongs, and this is a great expose. So is it going to roll out the way that we all hope it will, where the corruption and the deceit and all of the horrors that you named are actually disclosed and exposed for the world to see? Will it be revealed? And it's like a collective holding of the breath. We're like on that cliff's edge, and this is a monumental week. It's a huge week. I mean, I feel like I've been holding my breath for a long time, but especially the last couple of months. Is the hammer gonna drop? Is Jet Class gonna be released? All that stuff, just on and on and on and on. And to manage that anticipation is really difficult, because it can really take you out of the now. It can put you in, for me anyway, it kind of puts me out of sync with my own now moment, if you will, and puts me back in linear time.
It forces me, like it says, if I don't get in touch and stay in touch seamlessly with the now, I am going to suffer.
Yes, exactly. You're right. And in a way, that's that double-edged sword we keep talking about, because it does serve me to go, well, my only option is to meditate, stay present, stay loving and engaged with those who I love, my children, etc. But it's a lot to process, and we've been preparing ourselves. This goes back to our training, doesn't it? Like, I've been in training for this moment my whole life. I've been aware of the inversion since I was born. Like, it was so obvious to me, literally as a child. Of course, I developed different ways of understanding it, and it's made a lot more sense in my awakening since I got sober, especially from 2012 onwards. And at least, I wasn't one of the first ones. You look at like David Icke, who, has been saying this stuff for literally decades, and he was a laughing stock here in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
But everything he said has come true.
Yeah.
Am I losing you?
No, you're not losing me. I just trying to be positioned so I'm a little more comfortable and more able to be more level.
That's all right, darling. Take your time, reposition.
We put our viewers through a minor earthquake. See how survivable it is? No harm was done.
Excellent. You're fine. Good. You survived that tectonic shift.
Yeah.
Well, many of us who have not been in that preparation mode are in for a real shock when these truths are rolled out, and then there's no escaping it anymore. There's no, like the cloud or the wall or the fog of denial has to lift. And that's what's been keeping us sick. Just like mental illness, there's a direct parallel. Denial's at the core of all mental illness. Denial's at the core of our collective dis-ease, right? So it's up to us who have been in training and have been able to integrate and assimilate all these horrors, the GATES eugenics agenda, the adrenochrome addiction in Hollywood, MK Ultra programs, etc., and how most of these people are just victims of extreme trauma. And that's the psychological warfare that's been used against them individually to fracture and split their psyche so that they act in a psychopathic, sociopathic way. Right?
Imagine, if anybody ever saw that film called was it the 300, about the Spartans, how the father had to basically almost kill his son in order to train him to be fearless and not trust anybody, including his own father.
Yeah.
So that what the power elite have as a weapon against us psychologically, because this is psychological warfare.
Yeah.
Not just, guns and bullets. Their weapon is that we find them unimaginable. We find them heinous. So while at the same time that they are polarizing us against each other, we're polarizing against them because we don't want to imagine what it's like to be them. We don't want to feel how hateful and evil and murderous they're capable of being, because it's so painful and so horrifying to us that we see them as the enemy. We have to stop seeing them as the enemy. You see?
Yes.
That's so important.
It's everything.
And like when there was when we were trying to save the environment early on, the whole ecological movement, we were petitioning against and storming the gates of the corporations and the nuclear reactors and saying, you disgusting people, you bunch of monsters, you're killing our children, you're polluting the soil. Look what you do to these thalidomide babies. You're like absolutely the most disgusting people we could possibly imagine. How can you, we want to get rid of you and take you down for the count. And we found out that didn't work. And so we developed gradually the so-called eco-psychology movement, where we learned to, instead of demonizing them, to re-educate them. And that's not an easy job. I mean, how do we educate these people who love being one up on us and don't mind cruelly and brutally maiming and murdering us? How do we care about these people and help them wake up? Because we've seen the evidence that when we do exactly what I'm saying, they do feel seen and they do feel loved. There's a great story, I forget his name, who wrote a number of books, great man who was a disciple of Muktananda, and he wrote and studied and did research into people, especially women, who had been captured to be raped. And this one was just of a grandmother who, she wasn't about to be raped or anything. I mean, who knows what was going to happen. But she wakes up in her bed at night with this complete stranger coming at her with an axe, ready to murder her in like 2 seconds later, right? And instead of her going like, like this and freezing and polarizing against her murderer, she instead extends her hands and arms and heart and goes, "Oh, you poor man. What can I do to help you?" Like this. And this murderous man, this is an actual factual story, okay? He instantly becomes paralyzed. He can't even hold the axe anymore, and he falls to the ground weeping. And there's a resolution to this whole thing. And she goes over to him and goes like, "Oh, you poor thing." And she gets him a glass of water or something. I don't know. There's something amazingly crazy like that. Then there's another story where these two men, they capture this girl, and they're taking her to go rape her and then probably kill her or whatever. And they're holding a knife to her throat and stuff like this. And out of compassion and empathy, she cares about who these people are and how could they become like this. And by the time they reach this old deserted auto wrecking yard where they're probably going to rape her and kill her, they've been so moved by her love and concern for them and her indivisible empathy and embodied beingness with them that they just start crying, and they turn around and they take her home and wish her a good night and apologize to her. So he would put together these stories like this, which are just fantastic, right? And this is what we need to do as a society with these people. We need to learn from people that have made that kind of an example for us, who are just unconditionally loving. They don't give up, even at the point of a knife, at the throw of an axe. Doesn't matter. Beyond death, we are love. We do not surrender to fear. We understand it. We appreciate it. We have empathy for it. We care about it. We don't deny it, but we embody it and we share it and we transcend it.
Oh, you bring tears to my eyes, Spez. Honestly, that is it. The abusers, the abused, hurt people, and healed people, heal people. And that's the initiation. That's the call. That's the ask. This is the shamanic test we are in right now. Can we hold the light no matter what? Can we become the verb? Can we become? Can we, I don't know how to put it in a verb, loving unconditionally? The in action. Is this what you said? And
I'd like to give a little more paleontological background to this.
Please.
We have been eating and being eaten by each other as plants and animals for hundreds of millions of years. That was all unity too, right? To eat or be eaten.
Yeah.
So in the psychological study, the psychiatric study, I mean, I've talked to the heads of the multiple personality disorder research at the NIMH, the National Institute of Mental Health in Bethesda, Maryland, as of 20 years ago. And the acting president of the International Society for the Study of Multiple Personality Disorder, which is now called something else. But what happens is I give the illustration, a metaphor, like imagine that you're a woodchuck, a furry little animal, and you live under a barn. And you come out, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and you wander around the grass, and you eat grubs and do whatever. And you have such a lovely day. And then you go back and sleep and rest. And the next day you come out, and a fox chases you all around the barnyard and terrifies the heck out of you. Your heart is beating so hard, and you face your own death, and you barely get back underneath the barn, and you fear for your life, and you feel like maybe I can never even go out and eat. Maybe I'll starve to death hiding here under the barn. Well, let's imagine that hiding place under the barn is our ego. That essentially our ego, our self-centric conditioning that we cling to for safety, is our little niche. And another metaphor is like, imagine a little fish with a big fish coming after it to eat it. Well, that little fish can either say, I'm one with all fish. I'm one with the bigger fish. Just let it eat me. It's all one. No big deal. Well, if all fish did that, there would have been no evolution. Evolution would have ended quite quickly if we weren't individuating and creating a separative self, comparable and competitive, consciousness. Now, I wanted to mention Elizabeth Sahtouris, which I believe is Sathouris. She is one of the great paleontological biologists. I highly recommend listening to her YouTubes, reading her books. Also Lynn Margulis. I mean, these people are saints and of the scientific establishment, because they have shown how through a balance between competition and cooperation, just like the balance between noun and verb, between self and other, and this and that, and here and now and then, all these formlessness and form. We need these contrasts, like the friction between the two of them rubbing together, which is, that friction can get really hot. It can be as hot as a flame, as hot as the bullet that pierces our heart and kills us in one lifetime, or the gnash of a lion's teeth that took us down as a zebra and tore us apart as a living being. And we became paralyzed by naloxone-like neurochemicals so that we didn't feel the pain.
Well,
as we were being eaten alive.
Yeah.
So we have developed these self-isolating personality structures as safe havens. And in the field of psychiatry, talking about this with these experts in the field, I, having studied that field and having experiences of my own, an intimate partner who had multiple personality disorder, and feeling that the people around me were like fractional, shattered pieces of a puzzle that somehow I couldn't figure out how at first all fit together. They must somehow, or did they? Maybe they don't. And it was very painful and very terrifying to not know how everyone fit together as puzzle pieces and solved the bigger puzzle and gave us each access to the bigger picture. So these puzzled pieces that we each tend to be are actually suffering this multiple personality disorder.
Yeah.
Like the woodchuck. Now, if the little fish didn't say, wait a minute, I'm going to get eaten. I have a neocortex. Even worms have a neocortex that allow us to distinguish between self and other. So that little fish says, oh, look at that crack in the rock over there. I think I can fit into that crack in the rock, and that big fish can't fit in that crack in the rock. I think I'm going to swim over there really fast, get in that crack, and then I won't get eaten. And I'll survive to tell about it. And lo and behold, got in the crack, big fish couldn't eat him. And the little fish thought, like, wow, I've learned something today about how to survive as a little fish. Now, each of us in a way is still like a child, like a little fish, like a woodchuck hiding out under our personal barn. Now, in multiple personality research, we realize that we can have multiple personalities. We can have one that is a 6-year-old little girl who is allergic to orange juice. And that personality can take over the whole body, heart, and mind, and actually believe that this body, heart, and mind is a 6-year-old girl. And then a moment later, this other personality can take over the same body, heart, and mind, and believe that it's a 40-year-old man that speaks 6 languages and is allergic to strawberries. and whose eye color can change from blue to brown, who can have lesions on their skin. And when the little girl comes back, the lesions disappear. So we're we're able to mutate as a body, heart, and mind. And it would be very hard for us to believe that that's possible unless you actually experience it personally or see it with your own eyes. But this is an actual fact of psychological science, that this is going on. And to much more than you would imagine. There have been movies made about this, like Sybil was a movie made about this, and what's the other one? But there's some few major movies, motion pictures, that have been made about multiple people with multiple personality disorders. And Jekyll and Hyde is one where, Jekyll is the scientist who is revered and respected, and Hyde becomes this monster who goes around murdering people ritualistically and has no empathy for anybody, and then collapses back into Jekyll and forgets really what he's done, and then finally Jekyll begins to wake up and wants to commit suicide or whatever in order to save the world from Hyde and all that. And it's been used as a way of as an archetype, how each of us has a little bit of a Jekyll and a Hyde, in each of us. There's a monster in each of us. And because we want to deny the monster in each of us that would do harm to an ant or a fly or a creature, or kill a chicken and eat it, or eat cow, and not feel anything for the poor little beautiful all loving cows that all they do are adorable, with each other. They don't fight and shoot each other with weapons. I mean, they're not shooting at us. If another species were eating human beings and we had to live with that every day as a fact of life, I think we'd be a lot more humble. Well, if this insectoid race comes and invades Earth, well, we're going to have to come together, as Ronald Reagan said in front of the United Nations, and we're going to have to, realize our strength as in unity, and get over our differences, and begin to, understand that, we're not just the predator, we're also the prey. And if we want to stop being the prey of predators, we're going to have to start behaving more equitably with all sentient life forms at every level.
Comes back to cooperation, doesn't it? You explain the phenomenon really well, how the ego gate comes down, right? And it's protecting you from pain no matter what. And that's when those defense mechanisms become defects of character that no longer serve you later in life. Maybe they did when you were a child because they protected you from pain when you didn't have the capabilities to cope with the intensity of the feelings that came along with those traumas. But in adulthood, or, perhaps in young adulthood, when you're a teenager, those can come back and bite you in the ass and create those shadow moments that we don't want. And I'm going to draw a parallel here to the cognitive dissonance that we see in the collective, because it's just a massive version of that. It's a massive version of the ego gate shutting down with that which is too painful to metabolize and alchemize, right? And those of us who've come to the awareness that you and I have done that and alchemized it already, so that we can then instigate and facilitate that in the masses when this hammer is dropped and this information is exposed for all to see, and you cannot deny it anymore. And we're not crazy conspiracy theorists anymore. We'll be the ones serving as the keepers of space for everybody else to heal. And that's huge, because that's where, again, we're going back to forgiveness, and even though these people might be the ones that have been attacking us, buying into the mainstream, they've been programmed to, whether it's a verbal attack or online attacks, or, They've cast lots of clouds of judgments over those like you and me who hold a similar belief system or playing in the same paradigm, if you will. But as you said,
they were skin cells. Maybe we go up the ladder from being a skin cell to being a sense organ in the nose, or
I love
whatever.
that.
But
great metaphor.
It's kind of non-hierarchical in a way because we're all just sentient life.
Yes.
And we play different roles, and ultimately, my sense is that we ultimately learn by playing all the roles. It's not
Absolutely.
about playing a better role or a higher role, or now we've ascended to being, more of a way show, but really that at this point in our peculiar evolution, it's time for us to try out playing this role and then another role. And so we're still lower than others who are higher than us. There's always people that are smarter or more beautiful or amazing than us. So there's really, at some level, because we're all the one, we're all the same mirror, receiving and reflecting in some incomparably unique way. That's what our real essence and purpose is. That it doesn't, in some level, yes, we each are unique and doing something that no one else is doing in a way that no one else can do it. But it's really kind of relative as to how good or great or stupid or idiotic or innocent that is.
Oh, definitely. I don't think there's any right or wrong or better than or worse than. There is no hierarchical structure to it. And it's an incredibly humbling experience to go through. And I'm not saying I'm right, but this is the current reality that is presenting in my awareness, right? That I am reflecting. I often stop and think, wow, I must have quite the imagination to have co-created this crazy reality, right? That's just a projection of my consciousness, for all this to be playing out. And I'm going to laugh one day when I go beyond the veil officially and, ascend to speak to those who are certainly higher and wiser, and if you want to look at it that way, than me. But I think there is going to be sort of a collective sense of grief. And to preempt that grief cycle is something that I've been doing as a natural healer, as somebody who is playing that role in this lifetime.
I don't think that we can be, there's no way, it's inescapable, that if we're going to heal together, heal the insanity of humanity, and if we're going to be sane as a species and be enlightened on this planet, we need to be going through exactly what we're going through now.
Yes, totally agree.
So this insanity is actually essential for our sanity.
100%. You said it.
So, so the coin, on the other side of the coin, what seems to be the opposite, so-called opposite side of the coin, you wouldn't have a coin if it didn't have an opposite side. So, and yet the coin is, of course, a single unicellular coin.
Yes. And I just want to point out, I like to see everything from the lens of recovery. So in addiction, you learn to have utmost empathy for the newcomer in the room, right? If you're in an addiction, a circle of addicts trying to recover from substance abuse, say, and you drop all of your judgments and you drop all of your preconceptions and your stereotypes and your prejudices, and you see them as a sick person, spiritually unwell. And in that way, I think we can all try to absorb that message and use it in the week to come, especially, but more importantly, in the months to come as this continues to unfold. I do think March 21st is an important date. I think we'll see a big shift then. So I'm intuiting at the moment in the physical, but regardless of that, really, forgiveness sets us all free. And it goes back to that thing of, I think I said in the first episode, can I forgive myself? You know, and also that thing of, is it better to be right or is it better to be well? Like, let's drop all rightness or wrongness. Doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the resonant match to your perspective that you hold at this point in the quantum field. You know? But
Well,
I wanted to ask you, Sperry, just a little bit more in depth. Is it the co-creation of consensus reality you feel that is unfolding now? Or do you believe it always goes back to the projection of your own consciousness? Or it is a melting pot of both?
Yeah, I'd say it's both and.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, being a reptile and being a mammal and being a human all at the same time. We went from single cells by fossil record, if that's even as far as we can tell, what we found, to multicellular organisms about 1.6 billion years ago. And here we are today, made up of approximately 50 trillion human cells with 10 to 20 times bacterial cells, all functioning as a single, incomparably unique individual consciousness. So there's 7.5 billion people, more or less, on the planet. How many mycelium, can you quantify mycelium? How many bugs and ants and, mosquitoes and birds and rabbits and, every other creature are there right here, right now, as part of our greater body, heart, and mind, just on this planet alone. And in this planet, maybe one of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, in just this one single galaxy, which is, by best report, only one of 2 trillion galaxies, each of them with 100 to 300 billion suns, each of them with multiple planets, many, 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 trillions and trillions and trillions of them potentially supporting life like we have here on Earth. So, and the fact that at the level that I've been researching in physics with Dr. James E. Beekler, who is, I would say, hands down, the most brilliant, rigorous physicist that I know on the planet, after searching for 35, 40 years, that I've been working and collaborating with for the last 5 years, and combining our models, mine enriching his enriching mine, so that our model, 2 heads are better than one, we're able to, and 2 hearts, 2 souls, both of us aimed at the target of collective enlightenment on this planet, through understanding, which this new brain needs to do. It needs to, in order for it to integrate with what is non-verbally felt and sensed, it needs to get a clear picture of what knowledge does make sense, in the same way that we would want to know, does that smell right? Or does that look right? Or does that sound right? Or does that feel right? Or do I, in my gut, do I sense that feels like it's going to be, okay? So we've got to do the same on a rational level with this verbal analytic brain. And we need to do it interpersonally. That's why science, in a sense, was invented, so that we could go beyond the priesthood class, so that scientists were allowed by the church to investigate what is so through empirical, testable research, that anybody could replicate those experiments. And so we could come to consensus, among men and women, as educated scientists that, get degrees and prove their mettle in these universities, these unifying verses like the universe. And we have to tell you, Jim and I, that we have broken through. We have brought quantum mechanics, general and special and classical relativity and Newtonian mechanics together as a unified model. This has eluded scientists for over 100 years. Everybody's like tearing their hair out, like, we've got to bring these two theories together. They're incompatible. The theory of the very large, the theory of the very small. They have different aspects that make them appear to be completely incompatible. Jim and I actually solved those riddles independent of each other, met, talked to each other about it, showed to each other the first time we met, and we both agreed instantly. I showed him how that which is dimensionless cannot be divided by what is dimensional, that is the very basis of Bernard Riemann's geometry and William Clifford's theories in geometry that Einstein and Schrodinger used to form special and general relativity and quantum mechanics and the wave equation and so forth of quantum mechanics and Max Planck's work. And so we have shown how that which has been denied, as Nikola Tesla said, when science begins to study the non-physical, it will make more progress in a year than it's made in 100 years. And so I showed Jim how to bring the non-physical through using the actual already existing dimensional mathematics, because geometry is a part of mathematics. Arithmetic is basically, 1 + 1 = 2. But mathematics includes geometry. And so I showed him, because I studied, analytic geometry in school. It's one of my favorite school subjects and things like that. I was always really great at math. So I showed Jim what he had overlooked in the Riemannian geometry. And Riemannian had avoided it because he didn't know how to talk about or quantify a single coordinate location as a precise singular point. And so Einstein thought, well, maybe that's a gravitational singularity. All the laws of physics that he knew about failed at singularity. So quantum mechanics based their entire theory on particles being point sources, and yet couldn't deal with singularities either. They kept on talking about particles only in terms of their forces that they communicate and share and equilibrate with each other to create these fields and forces that we have that are only probability fields that, ironically enough, are made classical the moment we pay attention to them. In fact, a child can focus on a quantum system and it will maintain without degrading as long as that child is continuously, with undivided attention, focusing on that quantum mechanical system under empirical conditions. So quantum mechanic people say, well, how somehow consciousness is transforming the probability system where we don't know if anything even is a particle. It's all probability fields that are just probable. They're the result of probability equations, probabilisms that may or may not be, but they're statistically possible or potential. But when you observe the quantum system, like in the double slit experiment, the particles that before could go through both slits and behave like a wave, the moment you observe them, they start behaving like individual particles that are measurable and comparable, and end up on the receiving screen as particles being registered. Now, there's also the quantum eraser experiment where the particles could go through the double slit, behave like waves, but if later on in the experiment, after they've gone through the slits, by being reflected around through mirrors, even microseconds later, they suddenly can then be observed. The moment that happens, the screen goes back to a particle registration, and that which was measured as waves suddenly is now measured as particles. So it seems as though so the physicists are befuddled, like, how can the particles behave like waves, go through the double slits, be registered as waves, and then by being observed later, reverse all that, seemingly reverse time, go back and undo what was done already. That's called the quantum eraser experiment. How do you explain that? Well, I set out to explain that in my physics, through understanding that all points are indivisible. Every point particle is at core a dimensionless coordinate location, which is primordial and indivisible from all other dimensionless coordinate locations. So all points, all coordinate locations in space-time, energy, and matter, with fields and forces, are all made up of these coordinate locations. All three-dimensionality are made up of these coordinate locations, which at the original primordial level are just dimensionless points. And so at this level, there is a factor of every dimensionless point is stretching what is dimensionless in space over time, creating the fields and forces that we experience as the relative world that is evolving and being reunited by that which is inseparable as dimensionless. So the whole 3D is reunited and reunited and reunited by that which is dimensionless, which is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient at every coordinate location. And that is like the divine or God consciousness or the Great Spirit, making everything that we look at as a level of form, making it indivisible. Jim and I call it the fourth dimension, which Einstein talked about as the dimension of time. We've shown that that dimension of time, which Einstein talked about as the space-time continuum, that dimension of time is actually a timeless dimension. It's a dimensionless dimension. It's another 0D point, which is no different than the original 0D point, from which all 0D points unfolded in space over time to create this stretching of what is dimensionless, to create the fields and forces and particles that we see as probabilistic, that are united by the observer, which is the fourth dimension. It's also the zero dimension that is omnipresent and omniscient at every point in 3D. So we as observers, each one of us are doing this, and every point in our body is doing this.
Oh dear, you just cut out, Spez. Oh, we've got you back. You were
oh, good.
At that point of that's dimensionless. That was the last word I heard.
On your end, did we actually lose the video trail?
Yes, just for about a minute.
I don't know how that happened. Okay, so I don't know how you're going to cut that together. But,
well, that's okay. We can just pick up right where you left off, because God, that level of scientific detail is such a privilege to hear. Yeah. That's actually what's creating 4D.
Yeah. So we could leave the bloop in there and actually come back and leave this in here as an actuality. And so
part of life.
So we are that which is uniting and making the whole cosmos indivisible at every point in our body. We're literally being informed by the whole, by all that's being learned and unlearned by everyone and everything and all life everywhere, all matter and energy. That's where we got this 3-pound universe in the top of our skull here. This is how it happened, even though we were eating and being eaten by each other. Our intelligence has been learning how to embody the actual intelligence that is available at every point. You can call it biological intelligence. This is how flowers learn how to create unique flowers. and survive and grow and outpace other flowers or other plants, have struggled for biological territory, they fight with each other too. I mean, they're not all nicey, but they collaborate and they compete with each other both. And so every life form is looking for a way to recreate itself in a way that is more solidaritous, more survivable, more able to thrive. And so we've arrived here over, at least 1.6 billion years of our historical record, even with all the tweaking for the ETs over the last 300,000 years to bring us up to speed so we're able to be more resilient in ways that they haven't known how to do. So we're like their children, and they want and celebrate us to be able to take over from them and teach them how to be like they say the child is the father or the mother to the parents, because we go beyond them by learning from them, like the Eskimo children or the Buddhist or Vedic children. We go beyond them and learn from everything that's happening in this instantaneous, eternal now. And we do our best, even when we're older, and senior and walking around on a cane. We're wise, still learning. Our children are still learning. The little babies are still learning in that exact same instantaneous moment, which is four-dimensional, which is indivisible, makes all points in 3D indivisible throughout the cosmos. So we are able to access this cosmic consciousness, as they say that we have access to the Akashic records, where we can know everything that has ever been known and ever may be known. We can surmise it or imagine. There is a geologist who also studies paranormal phenomena at Laurentian University, Michael Persinger. Please look up his work. This man is a brilliant man. He's just been put down. He's lost his tenure. I don't know what they did to him, but it's so sad. He was showing how the electromagnetic field, the Van Allen belts of the Earth, the electromagnetic fields that surround us all are able to hold the totality of human history, no problem, just like our brains are able to hold our individual history, so that we are individually recapitulating everything that we've experienced from being a zygote in our mother's womb. Through experience, we're re-experiencing what we've experienced, and by recreating and remembering and recapitulating all that we have been, even as the Zen say, who were you before before you were born? Who were you before you had a face? And those kind of Zen koan questions. Yeah. We all need to ask ourselves these questions as a way of focusing our neurophysiological psychologies, so that we can realize that we're all in this together. We're all learning together. There's no you and me at one level. There's only one of us. And as Stephen Greer says, there's only one people in this universe. And ETs do think of it that way, that we're not this and them and those people and these ETs. There's just one of us. There's one people here in this universe. And we are the universe waking up to itself, becoming sentient, becoming cosmically conscious, so that this universe becomes an enlightened, sentient being, so that it can take care of itself consciously and sensitively. So that's what we're doing here as individuals for our own well-being. We're doing it for the sake of the greater good of all here on this planet. As Teilhard de Chardin said, we're bringing love, fire to earth the second time by bringing love to humanity. Carl Jung saying, in the process of maturation, the individual ultimately realizes that we're indivisible from everyone and everything. And when more of us realize the that we have a chance of having a conscious civilization on this planet. So we're all have all these mirrors. We're in a hall of mirrors that are reflecting and receiving us, and so, you know, the ball is in our court.
Oh, Sperry, I was hanging on your every word. That was incredible. And I'm so solutions based. You just literally spelled out the antidote to the end times madness. It's finding your way to cultivating that shared awareness, the indivisibility between us all, the connection in spirit, the fact that we are literally one multicellular organism called humanity. And the more that each and every one of us can actualize that, all the rightness and wrongness and divisions and black and whiteness and the polarization will naturally start to integrate and take that form of unity consciousness. And that's what we're all here to experience in the physical. What an exciting time to be alive. I pinch myself, actually, that I'm like awake, aware, and I've got a front row seat to this amazing show that's being played out on Earth right now. We don't need box sets. Look what's happening in our reality, right?
Let's put an echo out to Bruce Lipton, who being interviewed in just 5 minutes as like this giant buzzing bumblebee. He explains to Steinfeld on his interview program. He says, we've evolved from being single cells to being multicellular organisms, and now we're cells in the body of the earth, and we're coming together now to be able to hear each other and to be able to speak as a humanity. And until we learn to do that and speak as humanity to other species as a unified species, we haven't really fully become a human being as an individual.
No.
Alan Steinfeld, that's the name of that interview, goes back maybe 7 or 8 years. Bruce Lipton, Alan Steinfeld, magnificent 5-minute clip. So we can put that in the clip notes below the video too.
Yep, totally. Thank you, Sperry. I remember when you came with me to interview Bruce for Deconstructing Sentience. That was a really special time. I remember we were running on generators, and there were fires in California, right there outside of San Francisco at the time. But you were a source of support for me then, and you are now, and you helped me navigate my way through. It's all about, vulnerable sharing of our own personal experiences, being open and listening to other people's perspectives. You provide such a grounded scientific foundation from which to understand consciousness, the expansion of such, and ascension. I'm really, really grateful for, and I'm sure all of our viewers will appreciate as well. I want to go back to our original point. Change requires awareness. It's all about awareness, isn't it, Sperry?
Yes.
Do you want to say anything?
It is really that simple.
Yeah.
It's that singular and that simple. And if we realize it's the solution to all our problems is so utterly and completely effortlessly simple, then we wouldn't have so much fear, and we could just learn to be aware of awareness individually and indivisibly together, and we can just lift and merge and come out of this conflict, out of this conflagration, unharmed and joyful and grateful.
Yes, and the bifurcation that we're experiencing is a natural part of that process. And, all paths lead to enlightenment, all of them. There's no wrong way to get there. And the enlightenment is embodiment. That's a point you made earlier as well. And I want to add, sometimes for anyone who's struggling, because I always feel like I want to reach out to those souls, especially, the darkest hour comes before the dawn, and the best is yet to come. That's one of my favorite ones. Just pray for the willingness to love yourself a little bit more today, and you'll see that reflected in your reality. And you can climb the vibrational ladder from there.
There's another one, love until it hurts.
Ah, good one. Yeah.
We can suffer what we're afraid of and transform it into love again.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all that law of attraction is always at play, right? The brightest light attracts the darkest dark and vice versa, for a very good reason. There's a natural intelligence to everything.
Yeah.
And that's where that unshakable faith comes in, which I suppose is the ultimate antidote to the extreme polarity that we're experiencing right now on the earth plane.
Oh. Well, a wonderful conclusion to our latest.
Yes, let's do it again soon, Sperry. See what develops and unfolds, and catch up, because you've really helped shed a lot of light on the situation, and I really appreciate your time and your energy and your wisdom. It wouldn't be possible
without you, Christmas. I'm telling you, because it's like I'm almost voiceless or speechless without you, because without your shared knowing about everything that I've shared, there would be no echo chamber here. There would be no, the left hand shaking hands with the right hand, or the, two hearts beating as one. There would be, we wouldn't be able to be embodying the love that we are together to demonstrate and give people hope that they can feel as indivisibly one with us, as inseparable from us, because we invite them to, and there is no other choice but to be choiceless about sharing what you and I are with everyone and everything, dear one, as you know. And so many kisses.
Many kisses, huge hugs, much love. May love light your way. And I hope to see you and connect with you soon. How about I come see you in Hawaii this time?
Please. I can't wait.
Awesome.
As you said the other day, we have to whistle while we wait.
Yes, absolutely. Indeed. Right, Sperry. Till we meet again.
All right, loveliness.
Namaste to you.
Farewell for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.